and welcome. So for this little brief video, I'm going to be demonstrating and taking you through what I refer to as a working in exercise or a working in movement. Now a lot of these movements can come in a lot of different variations and forms, but for this particular one we're going to be on a hands and knees position, and we're going to be moving through the spine and the different curves of the spinal column, ranging from lumbar down into the pelvis and then up into the thoracic and the cervical spine. So a little introduction to the notion of working in. When we are working in relationship to movement, we're always trying to activate the movement in a way that's producing energy for us rather than expending energy. So here's what this is going to look like from this particular exercise point of view. So we're going to come to our hands and knees. And I'm just on a yoga mat here just to give myself a little bit of comfort on the floor. But I'm going to set myself up in a way which sometimes is referred to as a tabletop position, where my palms are going to be shoulder distance apart and my wrist creases are going to line up with the front edge of my shoulder. So the reason being is that when I come into a tabletop position, I don't want my hands to be too far out in front of me, but also not too far underneath of me that's going to put too much pressure or strain on either the shoulder joint or on my wrist creases. So once we come to a hands and knees position, I'm also going to turn my palms out just a little bit so that my upper arm bone can just turn out a little bit. Now that's just going to give my chest a little bit more room to maneuver, especially when we start to move into this dynamic sequence through the spine. My knees are going to be directly underneath of my frontal hip points, and as you can see, my spine is relatively neutral right now, all the way from my sacrum, the back of the pelvis, all the way to the back of my rib cage, and then relatively speaking, my skull is going to line up with the rest of my spine. Now when we're doing working in movements, in addition to the way that we're setting up here, we need that foundation to be able to access the different aspects of the spine. But with working in exercises, we don't want to be so concerned with, let's say, alignment principles. That is to say, how we are positioning the body. There are times and places to be a little bit more concerned with the, let's say, alignment of the body, for lack of a better term. But in this situation, we really want to be able to move much more into the felt experience of the body rather than, let's say, the therapeutic application of the movement. Okay? So, for this situation, we're coming back to our hands and knees. And I'm setting up the body again, wrist creases lining up with my shoulder, knees underneath of my frontal hip points, my feet are right behind my knees, and just subtly I'm pressing through my palms so that my spine is lifting a little bit away from the floor without collapsing to the floor. Okay? It's all about creating room and spaciousness in the body. So I'm just going to demonstrate what exactly the movement's going to look like, and then I'll take you through how we're going to access some of these movements. Okay? So from here, I'm just going to take a long exhale, and then as I start my inhale, I'm just going to start to tilt my pelvis and my sacrum towards the ceiling. So you might be able to see that my low spine is lowering or shortening right here. That's going to move the attention up into my thoracic spine, up into where my rib cage is. And from there, I'm just going to start wheeling my chest through my upper arm. So it creates this little arch in my spine, and maybe my gaze is going to go forward. Okay? So the opposing action is going to be the opposite. So I'm going to start to tilt my pelvis and my sacrum to the back of my knees. My abdomen's going to start to lift, my chest lifts, and as you can see, I'm starting to round through my spine. I'm pressing through my palms and I'm looking back at my thighs. So the whole movement's going to look a little bit like this. As I inhale, I start from my pelvis, slowly start to move into my low spine, slowly into my mid-upper spine, and then my head follows with that curve of the thoracic spine. I'm extending the front of my spine forward. And then again, I exhale, I start to round, so I tilt, belly lifts, chest lifts, and I look back at my thighs. So with this movement, again, we're moving from an anterior to posterior tilt with the pelvis, and importantly, I'm moving the different aspects of my spine, lumbar, thoracic to cervical, in the opposing direction. Now this is just going to aid me in, let's say, a more energetic sense to move energy up and down my spine, and importantly to create a little bit of heat in my body. Now when we do this movement also, considering that we're moving in the opposite direction of the spine, we're balancing out what we refer to as midline, so we're able to gauge where that is for us individually. Now just remember that we don't want to overdo the movement. We're just going so far that it's appropriate for our body and that we're creating a sense of energy and stability. I'm going to go through a couple times on my breath now, just so that you can see what it looks like. Hands in knees position, and I'm just moving with my breath. Pressing down through the palms, my chest is lifting, and I exhale everything out. From there, I start the movement. I inhale. And then rest. So again, we can just do as many cycles like that as we need. That's again both grounding us, but allowing us to fluctuate between the different aspects of back to front of the body. That allows us to move the different curvatures of the spine in the opposing direction. Again, allowing energy to flow, but also harnessing energy. So this example of a working in exercise is a fantastic exercise to do as a break, especially if you're spending a lot of time sitting, because we're accessing the different motions of the pelvis that's affecting the rest of the spine. Again, always do as much as is appropriate for you, but never more. Always go towards that point where, okay, maybe I'm doing a little bit too much, but this is still comfortable, and in a sense, the movement's naturally therapeutic for my needs. You may have been able to hear me breathing through my nostrils. If that's not appropriate for you to create that little audible quality, it is a technical breath and maybe not appropriate to go into right now. But if that's too much, you can always just exhale out through the mouth, okay? If it becomes too much through breathing through the nostrils. That's an example of a working in exercise and a great way of implementing a little bit of movement to your working day. Take care, everybody, and namaste.